Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, you're audible, Prabhu.
And my screen? Is
Yes,
it visible?
yes, Prabhu. Visible.
Okay. So we'll start with the Mangala Charan. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunnitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Yudapatakamanam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Sagana Raghunathan Vidam Stamsa Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paljana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakanitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Hare Krishna. So today we'll be looking at verses verses 11 onwards from the 10th chapter of Canto 1. Satsangan mukta dushango tumnotsahate buddha kirtyamanam yasho yasya sakritakarnya roshanam tasminyastadiya partha sahiran viraham katam darshana sparsha samlapa sayanasana bhojanahi सत्संगान मुक्त दुष्संगो हातुम नोत्सहते बुधः कीर्त्यमानां यशो यस्य सकृताकर्ण्यरोचनं तस्मिन्यस्तधिय पार्थ सहेरान् विरहं कथं दर्शनास्पर्शं लाप शयनासन भोजनहि सत्संगान मुक्त दुष्संगो हातुम नोत्सहते बुधः कीर्त्यमानां यशो यस्य सकृताकर्ण्यरोचनं तस्मिन्यस्तधिय पार्थ सहेरान् विरहं कथं दर्शनास्पर्श संलाप शयनासन भोजनहि. Can anyone want to recite? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Okay.
Satsangan mukta dushango hatum notsahate buddhaha kirtyamanang yasho yasya sakrit akarya rojanam tasnyasta parthaha saheran virahang katam darshana sparsha samlapa shayanasana bhojanai.
Nice, Mataji. Thank you. Next. Next, anyone? Okay, we'll proceed. Satsangan mukta dushango hatugnotsate buddha kirtyamanam yasho yasya sakritakarnyarochanam tasminyasta diya partha raheran viraham katam darshana sparsha samlapa shayanasana bhojanahi. Satsangat, by the association of pure devotees, mukta dushanga, freed from bad materialistic association, hatum, to give up, na utsate, never attempts, Buddha, one who has understood the Lord, kirtyamanam, glorifying, yasha, fame, yasya, whose, sakrit, once only, Akarnya, hearing only, Rochanam, pleasing, Tasmin unto him, Nyastadiya, one who has given his mind unto him, Partha, the sons of Pritha, Sairan, can tolerate, Viraham, separation, Katam, how, Darshana, seeing face to face, Sparsha, touching, Samlapa, conversing, Shayana, sleeping, Asana, sitting, Bhojanahi, dining together. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation, for they had been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. So, a very important point from this translation is regarding this part where it stated that the Pandavas, how could the Pandavas tolerate his separation? For they had been intimately associated with his person. So here, association with the personality of Godhead, that is being emphasized. So that's how devotees can be, they eternally enjoy the association with the Supreme Lord. And it is more important for devotees to realize this, the personal, the realization of the personality of Godhead. The living being's constitutional position is one of serving a superior. He is obliged to serve by force the dictates of illusory material energy in different phases of sense gratification. And in serving the senses, he is never tired. Even though he may be tired, the illusory energy perpetually forces him to do so without being satisfied. There is no end to such sense gratificatory business, and the conditioned soul becomes entangled in such servitude without hope of release. So even in the Gita, chapter 7, starting from verse 4 onwards, 7.4, 7.5 onwards, Krishna talks about the distinction between the different forms of his energy. Like we know that there are two main forms of Krishna's energy, the inferior material energy and the superior spiritual energy. We as conditioned souls, we are known as the marginal energy, Tatashta Sakti. This is mentioned in Gita 7.5. In 7.4, Krishna talks about the material energy, Bhumi Apanano Vayu, Kamano Buddhi Esa, Ankaratimai, Binna Prakriti Astra. So that is regarding the material energy. And in 7.5, he mentions about the conditioned souls who are the marginal energy. And there's the spiritual energy, internal spiritual energy of Krishna, that which is superior. So even in Gita 15.7, Krishna says, Mama Yamso Jivoloke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, Manasashtani Indriyani, Prakrishtani Karshati. We are eternally fragmental portions of Krishna. So the first step in gaining jnana, this is explained by Prabhupada in some of the purports, the difference between jnana and vijnana. Jnana is to realize that we are spirit souls. That is the first step of realizing our true identity. We are spirit souls. And next is regarding the realization about our position as the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. So we are trapped in this material body due to our ignorance, where we neither identify ourselves as spirit souls, and neither do we realize our eternal association with the Supreme Lord as his servants. So that's the root cause of all our problems, to the point where we are trapped in this endless cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. So, through the teachings of Krishna in the Gita, we can realize that we are spirit souls who are part and parcel of Krishna's superior spiritual energy. However, we are trapped in this degraded condition of being encaged in this material body that is vulnerable to this endless cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. And we are even apart from being degraded to such an extent, we also fail to revive our original position. So for that, only the association of devotees can save us from this position. Just like in the cases of many other exalted devotees like Narada Muni, how he became enlightened through the association of devotees, and through his association, many other great devotees gain his mercy to become exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord, like Vyasadev, Sukadev Goswami. So we have actually chosen to be trapped in this material body due to our own material desires, and Krishna does not interfere in our minute independence, regardless of the fact that we always have to be dependent on him, despite our material desires and our propensity to become enjoyers and controllers. Though we may choose to deny that, but even Krishna himself says in Gita 7.13 that those who are not enlightened, they do not realize Krishna due to being bewildered by the force of material nature, especially the three modes of material nature. Even in Gita 3.27, it is stated that Prakriti Kirmanani Gune Karmani Sarvasa Ankara Vimutatma Kartayamiti Manyate. Whatever we do as conditioned souls, we are actually we are always being under the influence of the three modes of material nature. These three modes themselves, they are mere byproducts of Krishna's material energy. Whether it's the material energy or spiritual energy, these are all the properties of Krishna, and therefore Krishna is never subject to these energies. He is the source of all these different forms of energy. So we are trapped in this material body because we chose to become enjoyers and controllers. In other words, we chose to somehow escape from the control of the Supreme Controller. Due to our propensity to enjoy, we chose to kind of liberate ourselves from the control of the Supreme Controller, and therefore we are trapped under the influence of this material energy. So our position is always such that we can never be truly liberated from any form of control, whether if we refuse to be under the control of Krishna, we still have to be subject to Krishna's material energy. And because of that, we can now realize our fallen position in this material world. So the only solution to this is to regain our original and eternal association with Krishna in his spiritual abode. We have to regain his association so that we can serve him as his eternal servants in the spiritual abode. But due to our current position as conditioned souls, our situation is somewhat as Prabhupada has described. We are like trapped in this tug of war, where whenever even if we try to revive our Krishna consciousness, the influence of Krishna's material energy is so strong that it tries to pull us towards its direction. The material energy, especially with so much of distractions nowadays, even when we try to practice Krishna consciousness, especially even when we try to do our rounds of chanting, it is always so challenging because that itself, with all these distractions around us, those are also part of Krishna's material energy. So even if we try to practice Krishna consciousness, and the more we try to intensify our practice, we will realize that the challenges of the material energy become much more they become equally intense. It's not like we can simply defeat the influence of the material energy. We will realize that the more we try to intensify our sadhana, the challenges will also keep increasing. But still, we have to realize that it is always better to struggle in our practice of sadhana, regardless of the challenges, than to be born again in this material world. There is in one of Amarendra Prabhu's lectures, it was titled like this: struggling in chanting is better than struggling in another mother's womb. So this was one of the titles for his lectures. This lecture I saw like a few months back, but the title itself was so meaningful. Whenever it comes to our sadhana, the easiest part of our sadhana is chanting, because it does not require too much skills or any other paraphernalia. We simply have to sit and chant, but still that remains to be the most challenging part in our sadhana. In Canto 12 of Bhagavatam, in chapter 3, it is stated that Kalaya Dosan Idai Rajan Asti Eko Manuna Kirtana Eva Krishnasya Mukta Sangam Panamrajit Kirte Yad Jayato Vishnu Tetayam Yagamase Dwapare Paricharayam Kalautat Hari Kirtana. So in this age of Kali Yuga, it is enough if we simply intensify our chanting of the Lord's holy names to liberate ourselves. But still, that itself, that simple practice itself seems to be a huge challenge. So that is due to the influence of Maya. So even when we try to chant, we have so many distractions, but still, if we are serious about liberating ourselves from this material bondage, it is best to struggle in chanting than to struggle in another mother's womb, because we don't even know what type of womb that will be. So it's best not to take any risk. It's better to struggle and get it done rather than running the risk of being born again in another material body. So our position is such that if we refuse to serve Krishna in his spiritual abode as his eternal servants, then we will have to be born in this material world, and we will still be forced to serve Krishna's material energy. So either ways, we have to serve Krishna for sure. We can never really escape from him, because simply because we are eternally fragmental parts of Krishna, as he himself says in Gita 15.7. So it is best to regain our original position and retain our association with Krishna as his eternal servant in the spiritual abode. Um, and even when it comes to the so-called atheists, even when they try to deny the existence of God, these so-called atheists and rationalists, whenever they try to deny the existence of God, the only argument which they have is that they say that everything comes from nature. But when they say everything comes from nature, nature itself is a byproduct of Krishna's material energy. So it is from Krishna's material energy that this material nature is manifested. So even for the so-called rationalists and atheists, even they cannot deny the influence of Krishna, though they may try to do so. And Krishna also talks about how he is also time personified. So even when we try to escape from being under Krishna's control in the spiritual world, we still have to be under his control through his material energy. And because of that, we are being subjected to many other hardships. If we understand the evil of this endless cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. In Gita 13.9, Krishna talks about the various aspects of knowledge. Actually, it starts from 13.8. From 13.8 to 13.12, if I'm not mistaken, Krishna talks about the various aspects of knowledge. Krishna talks about what is the definition of knowledge. So among the various aspects which he had described, Krishna says in Gita 13.9 that the perception of the evil of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi is also an important aspect of knowledge. So for a person who is enlightened and a person who is truly in knowledge, he has to realize that being trapped in this endless cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi itself is the person should understand the evil of this endless cycle. So how many of the conditioned souls, especially human beings, how many people really understand that being trapped in this cycle is evil? So even to understand the evil of this cycle, that itself is a huge question mark. Only when we come in the association of pure devotees, we can somehow have a clue about our position of how we are trapped in this cycle. So first of all, we have to understand that we are in this fallen condition and we are trapped in this endless cycle. And only then we can continue with further realization of our original constitutional position as eternal servants of the Lord. So for all this to happen, we need the association of devotees. And thanks to Srila Prabhupada and his efforts, it is even for those who do not go to any ISKCON temples, they can still gain the association of devotees simply by watching, let's say, videos on YouTube. But though the medium is the same, the YouTube platform is the same medium, but even in that platform, there's so many other garbage, and still people really won't be too interested in watching all these lectures regarding the transcendental topics of the Lord. And that is also due to the influence of the material energy, the illusory material energy. So that's how we are being incessantly bewildered by Krishna's material energy. Though we may try to deny his influence, Krishna still continues to influence us through his material energy. even when we are in this material world. And apart from that, we are experiencing many other hardships due to the threefold miseries, regardless of whether we are in this human form or in other forms of material bodies, the 84 lakh material bodies. So at least now, since we have obtained this human form of life, we must first realize that we are being subject to the influence of Krishna's material energy, and we are being trapped in this endless cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. And to liberate ourselves from this material bondage, we have to gain the association of pure devotees and maintain ourselves in the association of pure devotees, so that we can continue our sadhana until the moment of our final exam, as mentioned by Krishna in Gita 8.5. Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaprayati samatbhavam yati nashti artha samsaya. Those who remember Krishna at the time of death can attain his transcendental nature. And also in 8.6, Krishna says, Yamyapi swaran bhavam chadachanti kalevaram tamtam eva iti kaunteya sadatat bhava bhavita. Whatever form we remember during the time of death, that form we will attain. So whatever we are doing now, we are preparing ourselves for our next destination, whether we are going to end up in another mother's womb or we are going to regain our transcendental body. So regardless of how strong the influence of Krishna's material energy may be, we can still overcome the influence of Krishna's material energy simply by surrendering to Krishna. This has been mentioned by Krishna himself in Gita 7.14. Are we willing to surrender to Krishna? Are we willing to do what he has said in the Gita? So it is as simple as that. Krishna has fulfilled our material desires by giving us this material body, but at the same time, he is also very anxious to regain us in the spiritual world, and therefore he has given all the teachings that we need in the Bhagavad Gita. So apart from that, we are also very fortunate to have the association of pure devotees through the efforts of our great acharyas. So everything is available for us. Are we going to make use of it? The release is only effected by association with pure devotees. By such association, one is gradually promoted to his transcendental consciousness. Thus, he can know that his eternal position is to render service unto the Lord, and not to the perverted senses in the capacity of lust, anger, desire to lord it over, etc. So as long as we do not realize our original constitutional position as eternal servants of Krishna, rather than being engaged in devotional service for Krishna, we are going to be still engaged in serving our material senses. So by doing so, we are only going to be further degraded, and we'll be gaining much more degraded types of material bodies. We might end up in further degraded material bodies, and possibly even in the lower planets. So that's why it's important to really make use of this precious human form of life that we have now. Material society, friendship, and love are all different phases of lust. Home, country, family, society, wealth, and all sorts of corollaries are all causes of bondage in the material world, where the threefold miseries of life are concomitant factors. Regardless of the fact that we are always being subject to these threefold miseries, our false ego forces us to continuously deny the existence of God, and we simply tend to deny the existence of God by attributing everything to the material energy of God. That's why the so-called atheists and rationalists say that everything is due to nature, but nature itself is a byproduct of Krishna's material energy. So regarding these threefold miseries, Adhyatmic, Adidevic, Adibhautik, we are being subject to these threefold miseries throughout, whether it might happen simultaneously, or we will always be subject to at least one of these misery, but still we refuse to acknowledge the fact due to our false ego, and because of that we are always at the risk of wasting this precious human form of life. So only the association of devotees could save us from such risks. By associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment becomes slackened, and attraction for hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord becomes prominent. So here Prabhupada uses some very important keywords. Prabhupada says that by associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively. So regardless whether when we associate with devotees or even with our spiritual master, we must have this submissive approach, like to appreciate the more senior and exalted devotees, and only then we can gain their mercy. And being submissive is that we should always be willing to hear what they have to say, and also serve them in return for whatever they are willing to give us. Like when more exalted devotees deliver, when they are willing to exchange their knowledge regarding the transcendental topics of the Lord, then in return we must also serve them, either by we can also serve them in many ways, whether it's by giving them gifts or in other ways that may be possible. These have been described in the Nectar of Instruction. So due to all these various distractions and the influence of the material nature, so only the association of devotees can save us from being continuously bewildered. As long as we are bewildered under the influence of material energy, we can never even realize our present fallen condition. So as long as we don't even realize that we are fallen, it's just not possible for us to endeavor towards remedying the problem. We may not even realize what are the real problems of life. So for that, we need the association of pure devotees. By associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment becomes slackened, and attraction for hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord becomes prominent. Once they will go on progressively without stoppage, like fire in gunpowder. It is said that Hari, the personality of Godhead, is so transcendently attractive that even those who are self-satisfied by self-realization and are factually liberated from all material bondage also become devotees of the Lord. For example, the four Kumaras, when they were born, when they were created by Brahma, they, even since birth, the four Kumaras were such exalted personalities, because they, when Brahma wanted them to become progenitors, they refused. They were so exalted that they had the realization that they should not even unknowingly engage in sense gratification. So even during that point of their life, they were so exalted. However, they were still having this realization of the impersonal Brahman feature of the Supreme Lord. They were still not devotees of the personal form of the Lord. But in the third canto of Bhagavatam, towards the end of the first part, there are descriptions about how these four Kumaras went to Vaikuntha when they were stopped by Jaya and Vijaya. So in that chapter, there are descriptions about how these four Kumaras, who were, though they were exalted personalities who were having this impersonal Brahman realization, they became pure devotees of the Lord after seeing the personal form of the Lord. When they first smelled the tulsi leaves from the body of the Supreme Lord, even from that point, their bewilderment about this impersonal Brahman feature of the Lord, that was eliminated, and they gained the full Bhagavan realization. They became pure devotees of the Lord after seeing the personal form of the Supreme Lord. So similarly, even many other great devotees who gained the personal association of the Lord, whether it is the Pandavas who were personally associated with Lord Krishna, or whether it was Hanuman or Bharat, who were personally associated with Lord Rama, they were all, since they had the personal association with the Supreme Lord, so that itself is that itself makes them the topmost devotees. So that is how the impersonal Brahman realization is considered inferior to the complete Bhagavan realization. And apart from that, through the association of devotees, the more we bathe ourselves in Krishna Katha, we will realize that the mundane sense gratification is completely futile, as stated in the Gita 2.59, Vishya Vinivartante, Raso, yeah, 2.59, Vishya Vinivartante. It talks about how we can realize the futility of mundane sense gratification. Though we are by default, due to the dominance of the mode of passion, because as we are born in this human form of life, by default we are under the influence of the mode of passion, and therefore we are often engaged in fruitive activity. Even in our material life, we always tend to engage in many profit loss kind of activities. Whatever we do, we tend to estimate the kind of profits that we are likely to get by doing those activities. So that is due to the prominence of this mode of passion in ourselves as human beings. So due to these all these mundane sensual pleasures, due to the attraction through all these mundane sense pleasures, we tend to be attracted to them by default. However, if we gain the association of pure devotees, and if we engage our material senses in Krishna consciousness, we will slowly realize that all these mundane sense pleasures are worthless. because the essence of Krishna consciousness is not about escapism or um, to completely withdraw our senses from any form of activities. Because even in Gita 3.5, Krishna says that it is impossible for any living entity to remain without doing any activity. So in 3.6, Krishna says, if there is someone who, any person who tries to withdraw himself from any form of activity, that person is a pretender, Mityachara. So Krishna consciousness is all about engaging our material senses in the service of Krishna. So for that, we have the Navavida Bhakti, as mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atmanivedanam. So out of the 9 forms of Bhakti, Shravanam and Kirtanam, those are like the easiest types of Bhakti that we can engage in. They do not require any paraphernalia, unlike deity worship and other types of Bhakti. So simply by engaging in hearing Krishna Katha, it will somehow cleanse our hearts of all these material impurities to the point where we lose interest in all these mundane sense pleasures. So that's how slowly we can get attracted towards the transcendental topics of the Supreme Lord. So instead of wasting our time watching other garbage on TV or other mediums, so nowadays, since a lot of people are already having smart TVs, it is also possible to watch Hare Krishna TV live on YouTube. So even though the TV is also known as this, they use the term idiot box to describe the TV, but even that mundane piece of hardware can become a very important spiritual tool in our sarana, simply because we can use the same TV set to engage in our spiritual activity simply by hearing Krishna Katha. So even by using the same TV set, by using the same YouTube platform, simply by choosing the right channels, we can intensify our bhakti and avoid from being trapped by their other mundane sense pleasures. So Krishna consciousness is not about escapism or to withdraw ourselves from all sorts of activities. It is simply to engage our material senses in the transcendental topics of the Supreme Lord. Instead of watching other forms, other types of garbage like cinema and serials, we can simply stay focused on hearing Krishna Katha using the same TV set and YouTube platform. And if the more we are engaged in such activities, even our YouTube recommendations are also likely to change according to our patterns of usage. So if we were watching all sorts of mundane garbage earlier, if we try to watch more programs on Hare Krishna TV, or the more we watch lecture videos from other exalted devotees, so even the YouTube recommendations will keep changing slowly, and that's how we will naturally develop this attraction to always hear Krishna Katha. So simply by using the same set of material senses that we have and also by using all our other seemingly mundane properties like the TV set, we can still engage in bhakti through the association of pure devotees. And by doing so, we will continue to develop the taste towards hearing Krishna Katha, and slowly we will lose the taste for other mundane sense gratification. It is said that Hari, the personality of Godhead, is so transcendently attractive that even those who are self-satisfied by self-realization and are factually liberated from all material bondage also become devotees of the Lord. Under the circumstances, it is easily understood what must have been the position of the Pandavas, who were constant companions of the Lord. They could not even think of separation from Sri Krishna, since the attraction was more intense for them because of continuous personal contact. His remembrance by his form, quality, name, fame, pastimes, etc., is also attractive for the pure devotee, so much so that he forgets all forms, quality, name, fame, and activities of the mundane world, and due to his nature and due to his mature association with pure devotees, he is not out of contact with the Lord for a moment. So another praman for this is there from the chapter regarding the prayers of Kunti. In chapter 8, we saw how Queen Kunti was actually praying to Lord Krishna, and she was actually asking to undergo the same hardships that they were undergoing when they were forced into the exile and all that, because even under those hardships, they were having the pleasure of meeting the Supreme Lord face to face. So she was actually praying to undergo such hardships again and again, merely for the pleasure of being able to see the Supreme Lord face to face. So though we all may think of ourselves as pure devotees, but it is very unlikely that we would want to be asking for more and more troubles in our life simply for the sake of meeting the Supreme Lord. Of course, we should not really compare ourselves with such exalted devotees like the Pandavas or even Hanuman, Lakshman, or Bharat. However, we can merely follow the instructions that are given by our great acharyas. We can simply follow their instructions, like chanting our rounds, and also to engage in hearing Krishna Katha to go back to Godhead. So that's all for these verses. And we also have the other verses are also quite short. So we'll cover a few more verses. Text 13. Sarve te animisher akshesh tam anu druta chetasaha vikshanta sneha sambadda vichelus tatrat traha. All their hearts were melting for him on the pot of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. Krishna is naturally attractive for all living beings because he is the chief eternal amongst all eternals. The word Krishna itself means all attractive. And also we know that regarding this notion of Bhagavan, since Bhagavan is the one who has all six opulences in abundance, therefore he is naturally all attractive. In fact, he is the most attractive to all living beings. He is the chief eternal amongst all eternals. He alone is the maintainer of the many eternals. This is stated in the Katha Upanishad, and thus one can obtain permanent peace and prosperity by revival of one's eternal relation with him, now forgotten under the spell of Maya, the illusory energy of the Lord. So Katha Upanishad is this it is also a conversation between Yama and Nachiketa. This discussion focuses on how Krishna protects all living beings even after death and liberation. So Yamaraj is often seen as he's kind of a feared personality, but he's also one of the exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord, and that's why he has been he is known as the personification of Dharma. So in Katha Upanishad, Yamaraj imparts this knowledge regarding how the Supreme Lord protects all living beings even after death and liberation. He imparts these teachings to Nachiketa. Once this relation is slightly revived, the conditioned soul at once becomes freed from the illusion of material energy and becomes mad after the association of the Lord. This association is made possible not only by personal contact with the Lord, but also by association with his name, fame, form, and quality. Srimad Bhagavatam trains the conditioned soul to this stage of perfection by submissive hearing from the pure devotee. So apart from Arjuna, who heard the Bhagavad Gita from Krishna himself, even his grandson, Parishit Maharaj, he was also fortunate to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure devotee like Sukadeva Goswami. And since Sutta Goswami was also present there when Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken to Parishit Maharaj, then Sutta Goswami imparted the same knowledge to the sages of Naimisharanya. And thanks to all their efforts and mercy, now today we are hearing the same Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is all made possible only by the association of pure devotees. Even when the knowledge was being imparted, it was through the it was all happening through sadhu sangha, and due to more intense efforts by our foremost acharyas in our parampara. So today we are being able to easily, first of all, we have easy access to this knowledge compared to their times when they actually had to revive all those obsolete manuscripts, and they had to translate to different languages. But today we are merely enjoying the fruits of the efforts of our foremost acharyas. So all glories to them. Nyarundan Udgalat Baspam Outkanyat Devaki Sute Niryati Agaranno Apatram Iti Shat Bandava Striya. The female relatives whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears would cause misfortune at the time of departure. There were hundreds of ladies in the palace of Hastinapura. All of them were affectionate to Krishna. All of them were relatives also. When they saw that Krishna was going away from the palace for his native place, they were very anxious for him, and as usual, tears began to roll down their cheeks. They thought at the same time that tears at that moment might be a cause of misfortune for Krishna. Therefore, they wanted to check them. This was very difficult for them because the tears could not be checked. Therefore, they smeared their tears in their eyes and their hearts throbbed. Therefore, ladies who were the wives and daughters-in-law of those who died in the battlefield never came in direct contact with Krishna. But all of them heard of him and his great activities, and thus they talked of him, his name, fame, etc., and became affectionate also, like those who were in direct contact. Therefore, directly or indirectly, anyone who thinks of Krishna, talks of Krishna, or worships Krishna becomes attached to him. Because Krishna is absolute, there is no difference between his name, form, quality, etc. our intimate relation with Krishna can be confidentially revived by our talking of, hearing of, or remembering him. It is so done due to spiritual potency. So the spiritual energy of Krishna is considered superior to the material energy under whose influence we are being subject to as conditioned souls. We are subject to all these material bondage and the threefold miseries due to being under the influence of the material energy. However, the spiritual energy of Krishna is superior to the inferior energy, and we who are trapped in between, we can liberate ourselves completely by surrendering to Krishna, who is the source of this material energy that is seemingly dominating us at present. So how to liberate ourselves? It is very simple, simply by talking of, hearing of, or remembering him. So these are also parts of the Navayuga Bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. So the first three are Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. When we hear about Krishna, when we continuously hear about Krishna and we develop knowledge about the transcendental topics of the Supreme Lord, at some point we can also do Kirtanam. Kirtanam is not necessarily like singing the Kirtans. Even preaching is also considered Kirtanam. Apart from Japa and Sankirtan, preaching to others about the transcendental topics of the Supreme Lord, that is also known as Kirtanam. And as long as we keep ourselves busy in Shravanam and Kirtanam, naturally we can remember Krishna all the time. If the more we are focused in these two businesses, namely Shravanam and Kirtanam, remembering Krishna, Smaranam, becomes natural. It will be impossible for us to forget Krishna even for a moment. The more we are engaged in Shravanam and Kirtanam. So simply by being engaged in Shravanam and Kirtanam, Smaranam also becomes natural. And Smaranam is especially important as emphasized by Krishna himself in Gita 8.5 and 8.6. Like when Krishna says, Antakale Chamamya Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. So even in that verse, Krishna mentions Smaran. We have to remember Krishna during the time of death to liberate ourselves and attain the spiritual abode. So that is the most important aspect of Smaranam. So we can always we can always remember Krishna naturally by being more devoted in Shravanam and Kirtanam. So the more we occupy ourselves with Shravanam and Kirtanam, Smaranam becomes natural, and that will help us a lot in our final exam. Text 15. Mridanga Sankraberyascha Veena Panava Gomukaha Dunduri Anaka Gantadya Nedul Dundubyas Tata. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapura, different types of drums like the Mridanga, Dola, Nagra, Dunduri, and Dundubi, all flutes of different types, the Veena, Gomukha, and Beri, all sounded together to show him honor. Text 16. Prasada Shikara Rudaha Kuru Nadyo Didrikshaya Vavrisho Kusumahi Krishnam Prema Vrida Smitekshana. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace, and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. Shyness is a particular extra-natural beauty of the fair sex, and it commands respect from the opposite sex. This custom was observed even during the days of the Mahabharata, more than 5,000 years ago, it is only the less intelligent persons not well versed in the history of the world who say that observance of separation of female from male is an introduction of the Mohammedan period in India. This incident from the Mahabharata period proves definitely that the ladies of the palace observed strict parda, restricted association with men, and instead of coming down in the open air where Lord Krishna and others were assembled, the ladies of the palace went up on the top of the palace and from there paid their respects to Lord Krishna by showers of flowers. It is definitely stated here that the ladies were smiling there on top of the palace, checked by shyness. This shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex and it enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family or even if they are less attractive. We have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. Half-naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, but a shy sweeper's wife commands respect from all. Human civilization, as conceived of by the sages of India, is to help one free himself from the clutches of illusion. The material beauty of a woman is an illusion because actually the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, etc. But because there is the association of the living spark with matter, it appears to be beautiful. No one is attracted by an earthen doll, even if it is most perfectly prepared to attract the attention of others. The dead body has no beauty because no one will accept the dead body of a so-called beautiful woman. Therefore, the conclusion is that the spirit spark is beautiful, and because of the soul's beauty, one is attracted by the beauty of the outward body. The Vedic wisdom therefore forbids us to be attracted by false beauty. But because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing of women and men. They say that the woman is considered to be the fire and the man is considered to be the butter. The butter must melt in association with fire, and therefore they may be brought together only when it is necessary. And shyness is a check to the unrestricted mixing. It is nature's gift and it must be utilized. So these were part of the Vedic civilization. So since we are supposed to be in this degraded age of Kali, so it is not surprising that these important teachings are now considered as backward, because now we are supposed to be progressive, and many other jargons have been coined to completely transgress these teachings. But for those who are for those who actually realize the fact, whatever we are seeing as material development in this so-called modern age is the exact opposite of what development is all about. It is due to our obsession with our material body that we focus so much on material development to the point where we completely forget about spiritual development, and we think that transgressing spiritual development by transgressing the scriptures and all these Vedic teachings, we tend to think that that is true development. But most of the problems that we are seeing nowadays in the form of the threefold miseries are actually our self-inflicted wounds. We have actually caused these problems due to our obsession with material development and due to our bewilderment with so-called academic knowledge. The biggest, the most unfortunate part about modern education is that it focuses on negating spiritual development. During the Vedic civilization, all forms of academic knowledge culminated in the development of spiritual knowledge. So whatever knowledge that was imparted to focus on material development were imparted in such a way that it culminated in developing spiritual knowledge. But in today's so-called modern education, it merely focuses on negating the aspect of spiritual development. And that is why we are being, despite being trapped in all these threefold miseries, we still tend to deny we tend to deny all these problems because of our obsession with the so-called material development. So that itself is one aspect of how bewildered we are with this illusory material energy. We tend to think that material development is the be all and end all of everything because we identify so much with matter. Even when we identify ourselves, we tend to identify ourselves as man or woman. So much of importance is given to this material body, and that itself is the biggest impediment in our spiritual journey. As long as we identify ourselves with this material body, there's no chance for us to realize that we are spirit souls. So realization of our original identity as spirit souls, that is the first step in reviving our dormant Krishna consciousness. But in the name of material development, in the so-called modern age, it has come down to mere negation of spiritual development. In the Vedic civilization, it was not like there was no material development. Even in the most recent estimation by the British economist Angus Mason, he himself has estimated that Bharat was the richest nation in the world for at least 1,000 years, even in the most recent history. So it was not like there was no material development in Bharat, but in the ancient Vedic civilization of Bharat, all the material knowledge and all the academic institutions which focused on material aspects of knowledge, they focused ultimately on the culmination of developing spiritual knowledge. But nowadays, it has the so-called academic institutions are merely trying to negate spiritual development altogether in the name of cultivating material knowledge. So it has become counterproductive, actually. And that's why those people who are saying that we are going to achieve the status of a developed nation by the year 2020, the same people are also telling us that now it is best if we grow our own vegetables to cope with rising food prices. So that is the kind of material development that we have achieved in this so-called modern age, which simply focuses on transgressing all the precious teachings from the Vedic age. Text 17. Sitata patram jagraha muktadama vibhushitam ratnadandam gudakesha priya priyatamasya. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, Gudakesha, who is the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. Gold, jewels, pearls, and valuable stones were used in the luxurious royal ceremonies. They are all nature's gifts and are produced by the hills, oceans, etc. by the order of the Lord. When man does not waste his valuable time in producing unwanted things in the name of necessities, by so-called development of industrial enterprises, they are now using pots of gutta percha instead of metals like gold, silver, brass, and copper. They are using margarine instead of purified butter, and 1/4 of the city population has no shelter. So the bewilderment during this so-called modern age is such that the so-called rationalists and atheists, and even some modern scientists, they tend to claim that they tend to be puffed up with all their so-called scientific discoveries, which deal with material science, but they fail to understand that everything that exists in the form of matter in this material world is uh, a product of is merely a byproduct of the combinations of the 24 elements, as we have seen in from one of our Friday sessions titled Mahatattva, the principles of material creation. We saw that this entire material creation is basically a combination of the 24 raw materials or raw ingredients. Everything that exists in this material world is is just a byproduct of the combination of all these raw ingredients, these 24 raw ingredients. And these raw ingredients themselves are the byproducts of Krishna's material energy. So the so-called scientists are so bewildered, and they often exhibit their foolishness when they attribute everything to material nature, which is nothing but a byproduct of Krishna's material energy, simply to deny the existence of Krishna. They often attribute everything to material nature simply to deny the existence of the owner of this material nature. So such is the foolishness of all the bewildered souls in this degraded age of Kali. Text 18. Uddhava Satyakishchaiva Vyajane Paramadbhute Vikiryamana Kusumai Reje Madhupati Pati. Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as the master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. Ashruyanta Shisha Satyas Tatra Tatra Dvijeritaha Nanu Rupanu Rupascha Nirgunasya Gunatmanaha. It was being heard here and there that the benedictions being paid to Krishna were neither befitting nor unbefitting, because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. At places, there were sounds of Vedic benediction aiming at the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. The benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being, as if a cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, but they were also unfitting because the Lord is absolute and has nothing to do with any kind of material relativities. He is Nirguna, or there are no material qualities in him, but he is full of transcendental qualities. So in many of Prabhupada's purports, Prabhupada clarifies regarding this usage of the term Nirguna. Nirguna simply means absence of material qualities. It doesn't mean that Krishna is without qualities. Krishna's qualities are not material. They are completely transcendental. He is full of transcendental qualities, but they are not material. That is the meaning of the term Nirguna. In the transcendental world, there is nothing contradictory, whereas in the relative world, everything has its opposite. So this is also explained in chapter 15 of Gita, especially in 15.5. Nirmana moha jidasanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama dvandve vimukta sugadukka samye gachanti mota paramam viyantat. Dvandve vimukta in Gita 15.5 means that those who are liberated from dualities can attain the spiritual destination. As long as we are trapped in this material world, we will always be subject to dualities. We always tend to measure our activities. Whatever we do, we tend to outweigh the pros and cons in terms of profit and loss. So all our material activities are driven by these dualities. So that is another entrapment of this material life, especially for the conditioned souls. However, as we endeavor to free ourselves from these dualities, we can liberate ourselves from material bondage. One basic example to do that is by engaging in Karma Yoga. For example, in Gita 2.47, it is Krishna says, Karmani evadgaraste ma phalesu katachana ma karma phala heturbur mate sangosto karmani. Yogastha kur karmani sangam tyaktva dhanajaya siddha sityo samobhutva samatmam yoga uchyate. So in these verses, Krishna talks about how to be detached from the fruits of action. Krishna says that we have the rights to perform our duties, but not to the fruits of action. So we always have the rights to perform our duties to the best of our abilities, but we should not waste our time thinking about the adverse possibilities or the negative outcomes. What Krishna says here is that it is best for us to focus all our energy in giving our best to the task at hand when the going is on. So there's no point in regretting when it has been done. So it is best to focus on the task at hand and give our 100% when the going is on. Apart from that, we should also be detached from the fruits of action, because we must also understand that in this material world, we can now be free from performing any actions, regardless of whether we succeed or fail in our current task. Life has to go on, because once we succeed at doing something, we have to focus on the next job, like even in our academic life. For example, after finishing school, even if we pass all our public exams with flying colors, we cannot simply relax for too long. We still have to continue with our higher education. And when it comes to higher education, we still have to proceed to various other stages. So regardless of whether we succeed or fail, we still have to keep going. So it is best to focus at giving our best to the task at hand when the going is on. And we must also ensure that we are not too obsessed with the fruits of action, because the more we are obsessed with the fruits of action, we are likely to suffer the reactions of the work. Because if we are too obsessed about gaining success, when the outcome is not something which we expected, then we are likely to suffer. So it is best to simply focus on how we can give our best to the task at hand and not worry about the outcomes. So that is one basic example of how we can liberate ourselves from the dualities. So by being detached from the fruits of action, we can somehow liberate ourselves from all the other various dualities in our material life. So that is also considered one qualification that is required for us to elevate ourselves to the spiritual world. In the relative world, white is the opposite conception of black, but in the transcendental world, there's no distinction between white and black. So meaning this is referring to the absence of dualities in the spiritual world. Therefore, the sounds of benedictions uttered by the learned Brahmanas here and there appear to be contradictory in relation with the absolute person. But when they are applied to the absolute person, they lose all contradiction and become transcendental. One example may clear this idea. Lord Sri Krishna is sometimes described as a thief. He is very famous among his pure devotees as the Makhan Chor. He used to steal butter from the houses of neighbors at Vrindavana in his early age. Since then, he is famous as a thief. But in spite of him being famous as a thief, he is worshipped as a thief, whereas in the mundane world, a thief is punished and is never praised. Since he is the absolute personality of Godhead, everything is applicable to him. And still, in spite of all contradictions, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. So to understand these qualities of Krishna, there are many verses in Purushottam Yoga, Gita chapter 15. In Purushottam Yoga, chapter 15, especially towards the end of chapter 15, it is stated that there are fallible beings, inhabitants of this material world. They are fallible beings, and the infallible beings are the liberated souls in the spiritual world. However, Krishna is transcendental to these two qualities of being fallible or infallible. He is transcendental, meaning that he is above even the infallible liberated souls. So that's why his qualities are all transcendental, and they cannot be compared with the with how things are perceived in the material world. Text 20. Anyonyam asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam Kauravendra Pura Srinam Sarvasruti Manohara. Absorbed in the thought of transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this is from Gita 15.15. Krishna says, Sarvasecham Hridi Sannivista Matta Smritin Jnana Apohanam Cha Vedescha Sarve Amayam Vedya Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. So Krishna says that the purpose of learning all the Vedas is to know Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So mundane scholars who try to be learned simply by studying the scriptures, but if they don't realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so there's no, all their scholarship serves no purpose. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as the Vedas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. There's also this huge misconception regarding the Shrutis and Smritis. This was probably brought by the idiotic Westerners who tried their best to distort all our Vedic teachings. It is often misunderstood that the Shrutis are superior to the Smritis, but it's not exactly like that, because the Shrutis, especially the Vedas, they were more like encoded knowledge. Like even in Gita chapter 9, it is regarded as the most confidential knowledge. So the Vedic knowledge is actually in a very encoded and cryptic form to make it confidential. So it is it can only be understood by exalted devotees and the great learned acharyas. For us to understand the Vedas and the Upanishads, we still have to rely on the acharyas commentary. Like even if we look at Gita and Bhagavatam, though they belong to the Smriti category, or even for Ramayana and Mahabharata, we cannot understand these without the acharyas commentary. So the subject matter, the main subject matter of the knowledge that is imparted by Shrutis and Smritis are the same. It is not like we should only focus on Shrutis and disregard Smritis, or focus only on Smritis and disregard Shrutis. No, it's not like that. It's not like they are opposites. Both Shrutis and Smritis are equally important, and they all convey the same subject matter. They all convey the transcendental topics regarding the Supreme Lord. All the Shrutis and Smritis help us to understand the transcendental topics of the Supreme Lord. It's just that the Shrutis are in a more cryptic form, which can only be understood by the great acharyas. But regarding the Smritis, like the Puranas and Ityasas, it is more easy for us to understand the Puranas and Ityasas, which also deal with the same subject matter that is addressed by the Shrutis. So it is important to realize this misconception that only Shrutis are superior to Smritis. No, both Shrutis and Smritis, they deal with the same subject matter about the Supreme Lord. And in the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, while the ladies on the tops of houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti Mantra. There are songs of Thakur Narottam Das, one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. But Thakur Vishnath Chakravarti, another very learned acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs of Thakur Narottam Das to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. So regardless of whether we focus on Shrutis or Smritis, any mundane scholar who claims to be learned in all the Shrutis, if even after claiming to be very learned in all the Shrutis, if he talks about atheism, or if he talks about denying the existence of the Supreme Lord, then there's no point in claiming to be such a great scholar. Whether we focus on Shrutis or Smritis, they all deal with the same transcendental topic about the Supreme Lord. It's just that the Smritis have been, the Smritis like the Puranas and Ityasas have been composed in such a way that it is easy for us, especially the Kali Jivas, to understand compared to the Shrutis. But both are equally important. The ladies who are all absorbed in the thoughts and actions of the Lord develop the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions. Even in Gita 9.32, Krishna says, Mami Partha Vyapasritya, Yepisho Papayonaya, Striyo Vaishas Tata Sutras, Tepiyanti Param Gatim. It is often misunderstood that only the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas have access to the scriptural teachings, and therefore only they can be liberated. But no, in Gita 9.32, Krishna clearly says that regardless of whether someone is a Vaishya Sudra, or even for the ladies who may not have much access to the scriptural teachings, as long as they take shelter under Krishna, as long as they surrender to Krishna, everyone is qualified to be liberated. So here it is explained that the ladies' talks appear to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions. So the subject matter of all the Vedic literatures, whether it's the Shrutis or Smritis, they are all meant to convey knowledge regarding the Supreme Lord. So it is even for a person who is uneducated, who does not have much knowledge about the scriptures, if he simply surrenders to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he will gain all the knowledge that is required, because Krishna himself will make it easy for such a devotee. But for some so-called scholar who claims to be completely learned regarding all the scriptures, but if that person is so puffed up to the extent of denying the existence of Krishna, for such a person, he is more condemned compared to even the educated, uneducated people who are pure devotees of the Supreme Lord. Okay, so we have completed up to verse 20. So that's all for today. Any questions? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.